that microphone, but just tell us a little bit about yourself, what your firm does, and what's your favorite thing about mass timber. How about that?
Okay. Well, I'm a recovering architect. There are a couple of active practitioners in the room. I bailed out about 35 years ago. Scott is still with it, doing very well, and God bless the rest of you that are. I am a commercial real estate broker, property manager, developer. Our company, my partner Jack and I have been doing this together since 2010. Our company we started 2011, 2012. We affiliated with NAI Global, which is a commercial real estate network worldwide. Did that in 2018, and most of what we do is in West Georgia and East Alabama. Sales, leasing, commercial property, office, institutional, industrial, retail, and some multifamily. I think that about covers it. Mass timber, what I like about mass timber, the aesthetic of it, always loved it. One of my favorite parts of architecture in this region is brick and timber mills, and that's an early, very historical version of timber, but you don't have old growth pine trees that you can cut 14 by 14 or 16 by 16 columns out of anymore. So mass timber is a beautiful alternative. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Derek?
Yeah, Derek Ratchford, CEO of SmartLam. I'm located in Dothan, Alabama. We have a glue-lam and CLT facility in Dothan, Alabama. We also have a CLT facility in Columbia Falls, Montana. I will update you as 14 and 16-inch columns. We're in the middle, 3/4 of the way through a startup of our new glue-lam facility in Dothan, Alabama. It is the largest glue-lam facility in North America that's fully automated. We have 2 different types of presses in there. We'll have the ability to run 2x4 up to 24-inch wide, up to 79 inches deep glue-lam beams. So 24 columns, 16 by 16, whatever. It's all automated versus the 1938 way that we were doing it till a few months ago of hand layup on cold presses. So trying to get the costs in line in the automation versus manual labor helps drive mass timber as well. We have approximately 215 employees between the 2 facilities. We supply projects from California to Florida to New York. CLT to me is very simple. People like Laura Woodworks have made it very simple, very adaptable. We do some very unique projects, whether it's an Apple store in downtown Miami or Microsoft's first data center. The first data center in the U.S. that's using mass timber is in Virginia, that's ongoing right now. So we've done interesting projects. The glue-lam side is, I love that. I've been in the wood products industry for 31 years now. Laminated veneer lumber, OSB, I-joist lumber, you name it. The thing I love the most about mass timber, the biophilia, the look, the feel, the beauty of it, something as mentioned earlier, you can't hug a steel column and get the same reaction. So,
Be kind of cold.
Hey, I'm Scott Allen. Is that good?
That's good.
I'm not used to using one of these. Partner at 2WR UG here in Columbus, Georgia. We also have offices in Denver and Houston. Some of y'all might be familiar with the work locally, the natatorium, the Butler Pavilion at St. Francis, the John B. Amos Cancer Center expansion, the Children's Hospital recently. And so we do a lot of different types of projects here in Columbus. We've worked with some of you on those very important community projects here in Columbus. I'm also, for fun, I teach at Auburn University. And I can tell you that mass timber's here to stay. Past 2 semesters, the students, the structural system that we're looking at, the mass timber structural systems. And I've taught everything from second year to, and right now I'm teaching 5th year and thesis students from all over the world, over just about 45 minutes away. And it's interesting to see how their brains work and they start thinking about mass timber and what that can do to a project and the results and how that can impact design. For those of you that know me, you know I'm more of a modernist, and I appreciate the honesty of materials and simplicity. And I think that mass timber can fall right in line with that, and you can produce some very wonderful things in a simple and efficient manner. So that's what I like about mass timber.
So where were you yesterday with the 83 Auburn architectural students that toured our mill?
I was actually teaching students yesterday afternoon, but I did have a meeting with the dean on Monday, and I believe she went.
She was
Right?
at Tom Chung.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
So we do a lot of hosting of architectural students, which were great.
Absolutely. And Tom, you referenced Tom Chung from Lear's Weinstoffel in Boston. I think one of the images had one of those projects. Tom's an amazing individual. In fact, he should probably be in this seat instead of me because he's the guy, great person, and definitely an ambassador of mass timber. So.
Well, Scott, we'll stay with you and just to kind of build on kind of the local perspective for mass timber. Columbus has got a rich history here. There's I think, really unique connection to natural resources with the river coming through the city. I think more and more citizens are kind of aware of that, but from your opinion, what are the opportunities for mass timber development in the region, and how do you think that Columbus could better leverage mass timber in the future?
Sure, I think it's like most things, it's familiarity, and I think it's education, and it's getting people at the table at the beginning of projects and having those discussions. And bringing mass timber to the forefront as a valid option. And then, of course, the rigor of producing a job and the will to adhere to efficiency and simplicity, where in our market, right, we typically have tighter budgets, and we got to do a lot more with less. And I think a lot of what we heard today is that you can do mass timber in a cost-effective manner. I've got a project right now for the city that's about to hopefully start construction in a month or two. It's a small project, but we're using glue lambs and we're using CLT or NLT, just depending on how it goes. I wanted to get something in this community for people to look at, and this will hopefully be kind of the first stone. In addition to Columbus, I'm looking at projects over in Henry County and City of Gainesville. So I'm really trying to work hard to get it into some smaller markets where the budgets are a little tight and educate people. I mean, when I first moved here, we did a project, and the contractor called us and said, "What is this Tyvek stuff?" He said, "We've been putting felt on the side of these walls for 40 years, boy." And I said, "Well, it's going to change." And I think we're here with obviously mass timber is being used throughout all over the world and in bigger cities like in Atlanta. And I just think it's about familiarity, and it'll gain some steam and some momentum. So I'm really excited about it.
Mr. Derek, moving down the line, how speaking about what Scott was talking about, speed of construction, bringing all of those benefits to light, I guess, how does SmartLam work together with project teams on that process, and maybe describe for the group too, I think, how SmartLam plays a role in the building process, not just as a manufacturer, but a partner on the building?
Sure. Each job, you've got an owner-developer, you've got an architect, you've got an engineer of record, you've got a general contractor. All of them come into play at some time. They're going to select a manufacturer. I always tell everybody to, visit the different manufacturers out there to see what they have to offer that may be the best fit for your building. But the critical element for us is if we get to the point to where they do an early design assist award for us, our engineering and design team can help work with the architect, the engineer, and the owner to kind of cut through some of the bottleneck areas, because there's a ton of specifics. Or how are you tying in? Are you using concrete? Is it pure mass timber? The accuracy of setting the concrete versus mass timber, I can tell you it's not hard for concrete to get off 3/8 of an inch. If you get in the early design assist, we can help do the value engineering, because it touched on that earlier. You know, I'd love to sell you $10 million worth of mass timber, but if you tell me it's, 30% over budget, it needs to be $7 million, we can certainly work with you on the value engineering. Where 3-ply is required, 5-ply, sizings of columns, grid layouts, connections, the steel connections, if they're custom, they could be $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 per 1,000 board foot of the glue lam cost. If they're wood to wood, it's a lot less. So there's a whole lot of things that we understand from our manufacturing side. And if you standardize, what we see today is every project's custom. There's no pull out 3 different plans out of a box and quote me this. So the more standardization that we can do of the glue lam beam sizes, the CLT sizes and lengths, the better our productivity rates are. So we pass those cost savings along. There's always a certain amount of complexity to the mechanical, electrical penetrations, the MEP of the CLT, the holes and everything. So, but if you go with a spline, as Laura talked about earlier, insert plywood, that's one cost, because I've got machining time on the CNC. Strapping from Simpson, we reduce cost, but there's a different element of that in the field. So we just try to get in and basically give them an open book, because we're very open and honest about, hey, here's what we can do. What do you think about this? And you just work back and forth to try to get the cost, but to give the architect and the designer, the owner, the look of the building they want.
And I guess you all just finished a building in Miami, I believe.
Yeah, that was an interesting project. So I talked to you about costs earlier. Some people don't care how much a building costs, like Apple. They don't care how much that building costs in downtown Miami. So, we go in with our standard package of SFI, certified sourcing fiber. And they go, we don't want that. And we show them SFI chain of custody, and we don't want that. And it's a step above. And they go, we want FSC. Well, there's one, I think Westervelt's the only company in Alabama that offers FSC. Well, it was the difference between $400 per 1,000 board foot of lumber and $900. And then they were like, we want this, we want that, we want this. That job was over $1 million for us, and it shouldn't have been 500,000. I'll take it, but that just shows you what you can do, what you can do if money's no budget.
And you think there'd be some cost savings in transportation, getting it from Dothan to Columbus?
Oh,
versus Miami.
We're going to talk afterwards. Yeah, we're 2 hours up the road. Same thing we did with you guys, and as I say, with the new glue lam plant and everything, we're doing. I'll talk to you about the advantages real quick. You talk about design assist. There's a job going on in Dothan, Alabama right now, Hudson Alpha's Wiregrass Innovation Center. We were not involved in awarded early design assist. So it drags on, till you get to this point. And then the next project that we're going to do in Dothan is a new city hall. So about 2 weeks ago, I'd been talking to the city and, the GC and the architects about early design assist. So, they've signed up early design assist. They've learned a lesson, and that's one thing that everybody learns in mass timber. Your first job's usually not all that great of experience. Second one's much better. The third one, you have it dialed in.
Awesome. David, kind of representing the development community and commercial real estate community here, what sort of demand drivers are you seeing in commercial construction in Columbus? And how do you think mass timber could play a unique role in addressing those drivers?
Our demand drivers now, it is shifting slightly, but demand drivers now are the same they've been for the last 25 or 30 years. It's value. Our clients, which are primarily owner landlords, want value. If our clients building a retail building for lease, they look at the market. What is the market? What are my competitors going to charge this particular tenant? Can I get these rates? Can can I push the envelope a little? And the answer is you can. The opportunities in Columbus now are better than they have been because our market is beginning to embrace things that we didn't look at 25, 30 years ago. Building materials, new concepts, lifestyle. The Atlanta-Columbus comparison is one that is always made. Some don't like it. It is a fact that our large neighbor to the north can do more with commercial projects because they have a robust market. Their market is denser. They have a luxury market that will pay the difference. It's a small segment of what goes on in Columbus, but the biggest driver here is value. And if you can introduce aesthetic touches with a product like this, there are clients, and there's a good handful of very educated, wealthy developers in our market that will look at that as an alternative. Wasn't always that way.
Absolutely. And not to pick on Bill's project, but David, when you look at a project like Brookhaven, talking about your neighbor to the north, Bill, I think that represented a really bold investment from the community, and it was a probably once in a lifetime project for a city government, a beautiful building. But David, I would like your opinion just on, with the decline in office leasing since COVID and, a shrinking market from that perspective, do you think, office tenants in Columbus are looking for ways to make spaces that people want to work in more, and want to come and, spend the majority of their day at?
Well, I think the answer is yes. What has happened with COVID is that, quick example, one of our clients had I think it was a 13,000 square foot building in Brookstone. The building was fully leased. This goes back before COVID, but large companies like Aflac, TSYS, Synovus have had large office footprints in Columbus for years. Even they have shrunk. The market is going to smaller and smaller. So yes, I think there's opportunity. It will be boutique projects, something that you don't see on, let's call it, the retail market for office development. But you will see it, for instance, I'll pick on W.C. Bradley Company. They're very innovative. They're forward-thinking. They're also a very wealthy company. They would be the company that I think you could see, or an Aflac, that would ask their architect to give them something different and better, be willing to push the envelope. On the mass market, probably not so much. And I wish it were different. There are times I wish I lived 90 miles north.
No, man. I think there's probably a lot of people who live up there who wish they lived down here.
But I'm glad I don't.
Howard's one of them. Derek, you had already talked about, I think, a little bit how development teams can reduce costs. I guess I'll ask you the same question about, as you see growth, people coming back to the office, people maybe thinking a little bit more critically about the buildings that we're occupying. What do you really see as the opportunity for mass timber in that period of time?
Well, I mean, if you look at the statistics that the Softwood Lumber Board, puts out, and if you go to the Woodwork site and click on the mass timber section and look at the map of all the buildings being built, you'll see the acceleration. Obviously, I still tell everybody that mass timber is still in its infancy to a degree, because not everybody's using it, not everybody's comfortable with it, and your general public's not aware of it. So the more you do, the more exposure you'll get. What we've noticed the last 2 years, office buildings are dead. Unless somebody is building a smaller office attached to another building that they intend to occupy. There's no more spec building of 250,000 square foot mass timber offices. So from the office standpoint, I've written that off. I think when you look, there's obviously continued potential growth at university level for buildings, for housing. But this is the thing that most people don't understand. I'm used to a two-step distribution. You make the material, sell it to a wholesale distributor, whatever the price is of random lengths is what you get. Whatever you produce, you're going to sell. This is project by project by project. Each project is different. Like 20% of each building members are the same. We need 80% of the members the same with 20% uniqueness in order to cost justify some things and get more repeatability in there to get our costs down. And that helps the developers and everybody else.
So it's against the architect.
Yeah. And look, we love showcases. And, there are some showcase, I can tell you that Brookhaven's a beautiful building. I've seen a lot of showcases. I've seen a lot of squares and rectangles that are just as beautiful. But, the growth is definitely there. We see it, and I can tell you in the last, there was a very slow period from, I would say, July of 24 to about November of 24. But a lot more projects are coming through. We are seeing a massive rebound in California. And with all the regulations in California, what takes them 18 months to get approval for, you can get it in 3 or 4 or 5 months here. So that's telling me what's coming further east. And if you look at the growth of mass timber over the last 5 to 7 years, it may have started on that I-5 corridor out west, but you look where the explosions of projects are, it's east of the Rockies. And if you look at one of the biggest markets that I think you'll have is between Atlanta and Charlotte and Raleigh. And particularly Atlanta with the things you guys are doing. And, we're working on some projects in Atlanta that hopefully you hear about very soon that'll get your attention.
Awesome. And Scott, being a Columbus local and understanding the community here well and hearing Bill's perspective on their building, how do you balance creativity and practicality as an architect for a client? And then do you see an opportunity for Columbus architects and developers to start thinking more about mass timber?
So the first question, I think it's really about beauty through efficiency. You look at dorm buildings, housing, you've got a lot of repetition, right? And that's where you get cost efficiency. And like you said, there's some very beautiful rectangles and squares, and you look a lot in Europe too. Some of the projects done in Europe. You referenced the project in British Columbia, very well published project. Very simple, clean facade, right? So I think it's really about designing on a mission in an effort to be successful. And specific to Columbus, I think you see pictures of these projects and across the land, and sometimes folks in Columbus are like, well, why can't we do that here? Well, we can, but it's a team effort, right? It takes folks like y'all out in the community. You're at the country club or wherever you are, talking about architecture and building and development. It takes a team out in the community to do great things. The project that he was able to complete, you talked a lot about the fact that it was a team effort, right? From the beginning and during construction, right? So it's about finding ways, in intelligent ways, how you spend the money on a project and how you can make it so beautiful through efficiency. I know I've said that word several times today, but it truly is a major factor. And I do think that, like other things, familiarity breeds comfort. And when we're talking with contractors and they're not familiar with this building process, sometimes you're just going to put a big fat number on it because they don't want to do it. And then that's when you've got to really put your foot in the door with the owner to make it happen. Obviously, that's part of the process. So it's education, repetition, and making a project so essential that they can't take it away from you, take the mass timber away from you. So does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
It does. So I think we're going to open it up to the group, and we'll start here with Howard.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question following up on what you just said, because Scott, you mentioned hospitals, those sort of institutions in Columbus, and David, you mentioned some of the larger corporations that are here, and you've touched on the private market. And when you were talking about that team collaboration, what it made me wonder about, every place is different. So in Columbus, to your point, that you need a team, and then every team needs a leader, right? So specific to Columbus, what would you imagine, do you see one of the larger corporations, if they would only step out, or does it come from the public sector, and if you had a mayor, or, one of the hospitals, like, who could really bring people together? I mean, one of the impressions I have about a place like Columbus that's nice is you can actually bring a whole group of interests together. It's harder in a larger place. So how would you envision that here?
So here in Columbus, the Chamber of Commerce goes on a trip every year to visit another city. And we look at success and failures of other communities. And so sometimes you have 70 to 100 people looking at the same thing all at once. It's a pretty wonderful, magical thing. And that's where you really open people's eyes with regard to what's out there and what's being done, what's current. I do think as an architect, because it's all about us, we should be strong champions for mass timber and bringing that to the forefront early on. Prior to my life in Columbus, I worked in Atlanta and Boston and Raleigh, and for some pretty big firms. And I think the client base is different. We have to do a lot more educating down here in Columbus, Georgia, about what you can do, creating inspiring places. And this is no different, right? We've got to show people what can be done for their project. And because the other part of those chamber trips, it's about reinforcing the Columbus brand. It's about creating a better community. And that's what this is really all about. And so it's a piece, it's a part like everything else.
Thank you.
I add a little bit. I'm gonna add a little bit. I think what Columbus has an advantage, because one of the things we discovered or we've been interested in is biofield design and evidence-based design and the connection to nature in the medical industry. And the fact that you have insurance companies here and medical institutions, I think those are the ones that I would recommend you look at, because they see the value in evidence-based design, and the wellness component of mass timber is really clear.
Yeah, absolutely. And Piedmont and now Emory are great. It's great to have those folks in our community because they do work all over the state. They understand the long-term positive impact it has for the staff and the patients. And those are typically very regular buildings, right? So.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for Scott, and perhaps Bill as well will answer to it. What kind of pushback do you get from structural engineers, if any, and how do you combat that?
I'll let you can close, but I think it goes back to, we've been doing steel and concrete for decades. We're going to plug our numbers into our software, and it's going to be the most conservative thing on the planet. And you want to do what? Mass timber? So, it is working with structural engineers that are savvy with this type of assembly system to ensure that you're using the system in an efficient manner. It's not over-designed. So I think it's also, the structural community does have a big role in it.
I think it was Derek that said, making sure you're sizing them and that it's not just a one-size-fits-all. And I feel like that's probably a critical piece too, when educating the structural engineers. I'm sure they know that too, but.
Yeah, and familiarity as well. The more and more jobs they do and the comfort levels they get. You know, we have safety factors with wood too.
Yeah, I would add pretty much when I first started exploring this about 10 years ago, my structural engineers got it, and they, some of the better structural engineers in the state were really excited about it. So yeah, that'll work. But then when I asked for fees, because they never done one before, and luckily I met Britt Peters, up in the Portland Mass Timber Conference, and it was actually in the fee negotiation stage that my favorite local structural engineer, I won't say his name, and he really wants to do a mass timber building, but his fee was almost twice because he hadn't done one. And so, in the experience of somebody like, I'm so glad it's us here, they work on both sides. I really think you have to, more than any other product, you have to give the manufacturer credit. I mean, you really have to. I mean, I have developers like, we don't even want to talk to the architect, we just want to talk to the manufacturer. And, unfortunately, but if you're developer driven, you start there. But Britt Peters out of Greenville, now they have an office in Atlanta, right? I think.
Athens,
Yeah.
outside of Athens.
Yeah, so they work on both sides. So they've done the shop drawing side. If you're in the industry, that's helping the manufacturer produce something, and they work on this side. So they were a gift to the team. Getting the right team together is big. And I think this in Atlanta, most of the structures I know are very excited about it. So they just need to, but they're also very busy. So they just like, yeah, I'm excited, but it's going to cost you this much.
When you were doing talked about value engineering, so you
Yeah.
tweaked, that was in the design process?
Yes. Yeah, it never really ends. That engineering never really ends in the design. It's expensive for the architect to go through that process. It's team building, because I had some very good technical architects on this team that were very defensive of the design, and I had a very good contractor who was defensive of the cost, and they were just like this, and you just need to go work in the trailer, become a team. It really, and then I watched it happen. It's that chemistry when they're working together that close every day. I didn't talk a lot about it, but it's a big thing. The other big thing in doing a mass timber is the BIM modeling, for those that are in the industry. But BIM is the 3D modeling, is really important. And engineers and architects aren't used to that level of detail of their drawings. They're conceptual, they know how the parts work, they know how the codes work. But really the tolerance in mass timber and the integration with the sprinkler line, all that has to be done before they will start cutting it, before they'll start forming it. And so the BIM modeling, and usually it's the contractor's BIM model, but we're feeding them our BIM model, and then they're going back and forth. And the building is digitally designed at a level that we typically don't do in order to go into it. But I've learned that the manufacturer is able to cut the whole building in 1 day. 1 day. So, once you give all this stuff,
Yeah.
but you gotta be right, because if you make a mistake,
So, couple of additional questions. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I just have a question. We talked a lot today kind of about how this is like a much lower cost form of construction. And we've also talked about how we've seen a huge amount of people leaving office buildings. I know it's been a trend in California and Northeast that a lot of these office buildings that are now empty are being turned into housing. But a lot of the cases, and I think maybe other people who are still in the rental market can attest to this, a lot of times they almost use that as sustainable to almost make it luxury housing. Have you guys kind of seen that, or have you seen kind of a trend in maybe a growth of affordable housing, kind of what's going on, and the ability to reduce costs?
Comment I can make, and we have not seen that in Columbus. For instance, let's take a large office that's being repurposed. I'll speak from a slightly biased perspective. Some of the industry sources we track that I look at, what's going on in commercial real estate, it gets a lot of attention, and it seems to make a lot of sense to repurpose an office building. And Scott can speak to the nuts and bolts of this, but you got a big building that doesn't have the infrastructure that you need for residential. You don't have enough plumbing. You don't have enough. You can't meet the building codes, the fire codes, without a lot of expensive modifications. So on the surface, it's a great concept, but practically speaking, unless you get that structure, that shell for pennies on the dollar, it's real tough to do.
I was going to chime in. I'm sorry, I'm Jack Hayes, I'm NAI GT Commercial, David Johnson's business partner. He's absolutely correct, and also don't forget, there are existing mortgages by those building owners, and to David's point, it's going to have to go into some sort of foreclosure, be sold pennies on dollars, to even make the redevelopment of it even economically possible. You're seeing a lot of that being looked at in New York City, but they're still having very difficulty, because there's also the local building authorities, fire marshals, and I think the comment was the infrastructure's not there, come back and adapt to the property, and getting it permitted, it can be substantially more difficult. Easier said than done.
So you guys are saying tear the building down, start with timber.
That's right.
I want to make sure to get to this question right here. Yes, sir.
So, have you all done any big mass timber projects for the federal government or on the Army installation? I know that a lot of it was talked about being more risky because it's newer in the southeast.
Yeah,
A lot of contractors are worried about it, and you have to do it as a CMAR project with the construction management risk.
Yeah, I can't remember the year. I've been with SmartLam just under 4 years, but I want to say it's 17, 18, when the DOD and the Army funded 5 different hotels. You saw the photo of the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville. The one that SmartLam did was Joint Base Lewis McChord hotel out there. We've seen, they were supposed to, a lot was supposed to happen off the backs of those 5 hotels, but nothing has. I can tell you what we have been intimately involved with the last 7 years is a lot of blast testing down at Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. We just completed the final round last summer, and it is amazing to see when they light up 1,000 pounds of TNT directionally forced on that 9-ply wall building. What happens and what doesn't happen. That was the final stages to get into the code approvals for the State Department to build embassies abroad, and they're supposed to be sending out RFPs for Q4, Q1 of next year for an embassy in Canada and one in South America. There's been some base housing, Fort Bragg in North, I don't think that's the name now, it might be Fort Liberty or something. Yeah, so forgive me. We've been trying to work with Fort Novacell, the old Fort Rucker, just west of Dothan, with both senators for quite a while now. There's a lot of interest. The Army Corps of Engineering put out a memorandum to where they give mass timber a look on every project, but I'm not aware of any project that they've done. It's the same thing. When we had 29 of them from Mobile come to Dothan, they go, what do we do when we want to build a building? Because we know how to build them this way. We got all the plans, everybody's familiar with it. Who's going to help us? And we go, well, there's EORs and we help. We can help reduce the engineering costs, and once you get going, things are great. But it's the federal government. It is extremely difficult. And what we're doing as an industry is without the help of the federal government. If they dip their toes into it, I'd build 2 more plants tomorrow. But what we're dealing with now is 90% of what we deal with is private. There's public, university-wise, and private institutions as well. So I welcome the DOD, everybody to get involved. And they're doing little, things here and there. They are, but it takes a lot longer through the government than private industry.
Thank you.
Matt, one comment.
Yep.
What I'm hearing, and I'm backing up a few minutes, if there's a connection or a gateway, a path for more of this building type in Columbus, Georgia, probably not going to see it in my industry. What I do realize, you will see it in institutional and government projects and, certain level of wealthy, corporate entities, because they have the ability to do that. The DOD, we joked about it on our call earlier this week. They're not constrained by budget, but they are used to doing things a certain way. We have a good handful of institutions here in Columbus, up to and including local government, that I think is a gateway for these type of projects. That's where this building type will get its foot in the door in Columbus, Georgia.
Absolutely. Any further questions for the group? All right, kind of lightning round here. One takeaway that you'd like to provide to the audience based on everything you've heard today. We'll start with you, David.
I got an education on what this product type can do, particularly where repetition or similarity of structure and components can carry its own weight.
Yeah, my takeaway is the complexity of the architectural side of it, to be honest with you, because I don't live in that world. And when you look at what Bill did with the building in Brookhaven and you see all these buildings, you go, now I see the other side of it. I'm focused on the manufacturing, the engineering, all that side. So that's been my key takeaway.
I think it's really about a team effort. Everyone in the community rallying around something like this to make it happen. I'm excited that this little project we've got with CCG right now will be under construction shortly. And I hope it's the first one of many. And I'd just like to thank all of you for being here. I know you're probably going to do that anyway, but I think it means a lot that this is something that's of interest to you, and it should be. I don't drive a Prius, but I am very concerned about the environment and providing architecture that is healthy architecture. It's inspiring, and this all plays into that so easily. So thank you.
You don't have to drive a Prius to be concerned about the environment. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time, and would you guys join me in giving them a round of applause?